Hi, I'm Becky Hagler, and this is Not So Grim, Gentle Fables and Cautionary Tales. Not So Grim is my collection of 12 magic realism stories. In his dedication of The Lion, the Witch, and the Wardrobe, C.S. Lewis said to the young people for whom he was writing, "Someday you will be old enough to start reading fairy tales again. Not So Grim is a book for people who are ready for fairy tales. They take place in the recognizable world, but I also peel back the edge to see into another reality a little bit. They really reference the old fairy tales in many ways, but they are sort of a tap on the conscience to the 21st century reader as well." Larry Thomas, a member of the Texas Institute of Letters and the 2008 Poet Laureate of Texas, was kind enough to write a review for Not So Grim. "Rare is a story which instructs a reader as it entertains. Each of the 12 stories of this collection does just that. The author is a master at navigating the shadowy boundary between the magic and the real. Intriguingly various in setting, character, and plot, these well-crafted tales will resonate in the reader's mind and heart long after they are read." I'd like to read you the opening section of one of the stories. This story is told in the first-person viewpoint of a young man in his 20s. It is titled Starry Night. Starry Night. When the sky is really dark, clear but not much moon, the stars take over the night. If you look across the I-220 bridge back at Shreveport from our little cove on the south shore of Cross Lake, you can feel like you're on the edge of Van Gogh's Starry Night over the Rhone. Not that other Starry Night at the cafe or the one with the village. Those are okay, but the starlight on the water does it for me. I can't remember the first time I came over here. It was my uncle's fish camp, and he and my dad used to bring me out here. Uncle Zach never married, so when he died, Dad got it. Now Dad's gone too, and it's going to be mine. We could have sold it lots of times, especially after the fancy houses started going in a little ways east of here, but Zach and Dad didn't need the money. I could use some help with my student loans, but I'd also like to hold on to the property. I've loved the night view of the water back to the bridge all my life. When I was just a kid, sometimes I'd squirrel away in my closet and think about that when Mom got to yelling, or later when she was sick and crying all the time. For a long time, after she had to go away and it was just Dad and me, at night I pretended I was camping out at the lake. I guess because she wasn't expected to be there, I didn't miss her as much if I imagined I was at the lake with the stars. And when I got bored in classes, I doodled the outline of that bridge, or the vaulted arches underneath it, like a cathedral. My French teacher had a lot of famous paintings on posters, which she rotated on her walls during the year. When Starry Night over the Rhone came up in October of my junior year, it was the first time I'd seen the Van Gogh, and I couldn't believe what I saw. It was my scene, looking out over Cross Lake and the I-220 bridge. Even though Van Gogh was Dutch, Starry Night over the Rhone was a French location, and I was hooked. I really got into French, and amazed everybody, including myself, that I could make an A in something. I soaked up everything I could about Van Gogh, too. Found out he might have been manic depressive like my mom, or maybe just depressed like me. The French Club took a field trip to a Dallas museum for an exhibition of the Impressionists, and I got to see a couple of his lesser-known works, some portraits. In the museum gift shop, there were postcards and posters of all the Starry Night paintings. I decided to skip supper at the restaurant on the way home so I could spend $14.95 for a poster of Starry Night over the Rhone. A big commitment for a 16-year-old boy, even a nerd. I put it up in my room, but I never told Dad why I liked it so much. I don't think he ever saw in it what I did. About a year ago, when Dad had his heart attack, I came out to the camp after leaving the hospital because I really needed to get quiet on the inside. The doctors were already telling me it was a bad one and that Dad might not make it. It was a lot for a college kid with no close relatives and no real friends. I had taken Katie out a few times, but I don't think she wanted to know about my family problems. Jimmy was the only one I might have talked to, and he was out of town for his grandparents' anniversary. That night was the first time I got lost at the lake. That's what I called it. Maybe I was disoriented from worry or fatigue, but I know this acre of land like I know my bedroom. You pull off the parish road onto a little patch of gravel Zach and Dad spread themselves. Then you take a path worn down by our tramping through a stand of live oaks and pines and brush of various kinds. After 20, maybe 30 yards, you come out in a clearing next to the water, and there's a little picnic shelter we built, and the old dock where we keep a boat tied up. For a few years we had a storage shed on the property, but kids or vagrants started breaking in and taking stuff. Somebody even camped there for a while one winter. We finally tore it down. Anyway, there's only one way in or out from the road, but I got lost on my way back to the car that night. I checked my watch, so I remember it was about 11 that night. When I came through the trees, my car was gone. I couldn't believe it. I didn't need that on top of having Dad maybe dying in the hospital and midterms coming up. I tromped on up to the parish road, or where it should have been, but there was just a dirt track. It was obviously worn down by a lot of traffic, but there was no sign of any paving. It freaked me out. I couldn't figure how I could have gotten so lost on my way from the lakeshore to the road in a spot I knew as well as any place on earth. I stood there, staring up and down the dirt road for a few minutes, trying to think what I was going to do next. My cell phone doesn't get good coverage at the lake, and I doubted I could get a signal even if I had someone to call. While I was standing by the road, I heard noises, like from the soundtrack of an old western, a creaky wagon being pulled by a horse. I stepped back and tried to blend in with the shadow of a pine tree. I saw the light swaying first. When the wagon came into view, I could see the driver had a lantern from a pole sticking up in the front corner of the wagon. He was talking to his horse a little, not too loud, and then he started singing in French. I could make out a few words, but I didn't know the tune. Now this is Louisiana, but not South Louisiana, and there aren't a bunch of people here who go around speaking French, even though we like to pretend we're all Cajun when we talk to people from Texas. I waited until the wagon passed. Then I turned to go back through the trees to the water. I don't know why. I guess it seemed like a safe thing to go back to a familiar place while I decided what to do. From the picnic shelter, I stared up at the path to the road and satisfied myself there really was only one way out. So I headed back to the gravel clearing again, and my car was parked right where I'd left it. I alternated between thinking, thank God I'm not crazy after all, and I must be going crazy, like Mom.
Buy this book to read the rest of the story. Not So Grim, Gentle Fables and Cautionary Tales by Becky Hagler, published by Laughing Cactus Press, an imprint of Silver Boomer Books. The book can be ordered from laughingcactuspress.com or at silverboomerbooks.com. This video book trailer from SBB Multimedia Presentations was filmed and edited by Chase Pine Productions.